Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the All-Star Break DMZ, everybody. Bill, you're looking sharp with the beard there, man.
Thank you. Courtesy of Pam's Kicking Cuts, my hairstylist of choice around the corner. And you look very dapper yourself in your polo shirt. You're very business cash. People see you on CNN more than anything now. So they see you all dapper. They don't see, what's Matt Lewis like at home.
This is, I mean, I could reveal like celebrities. They're just like us. No, actually, I've the last few haircuts I've gotten have been done by the same person who does Nancy Pelosi's hair.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Does that person share any gossip?
No, he's very tight-lipped. I've found that the old barbers will. I used to get my hair cut by some old barbers who would cut like Robert Bork's hair and John Kent Cook's hair and different people like that, and I think at one point even Bobby Kennedy, But this is more of a salon. I think it's a little more hush hush. Doesn't tell a lot of tales out of school.
Just one more step of you being ensconced in the liberal elite, abandoning your white working class roots. It's a sad state of affairs.
Well, no, I think my ambition the whole time was to abandon it. That's the American dream.
You are why Trump won.
Look, I think if nothing else, the fact that I have a lot of family who supports Trump, including my mom, and I talk to almost every day. I'm not saying it keeps me grounded, but I think it certainly is a perspective that a lot of people in the media don't even have. Like there are people, you've got conservative relatives and in-laws, but I think there are probably a lot of people like in the media who don't know a Trump voter, like they never, So I'm technically still, I think of value just the fact that I know the Trump voters.
Now, we weren't planning to talk about this when we prepped off air, and this surely is not the most important subject of the week, but
David Brooks.
That's exactly where I'm going. Being as someone who has, you've crossed the Rubicon from white working class America to liberal elite. David Brooks writes this column about how the top 20% have shut out working class America from their fruits. He tells this anecdote about how he brings a friend who doesn't have a college degree to a gourmet sandwich shop with fancy Italian ingredients, and
I would have had no idea what that food is, by the way. Like if I'm a fancy cosmopolitan elite, I would have had no idea either what to order at that sandwich shop, and I also would have wanted to go eat Mexican.
Which of course is not, which is also ethnic food.
Right. I mean, it's not like we're going out for, I don't know, fried chicken and French fries or something, or, a cheeseburger. I mean, this is like, yeah, I mean, Mexican, like when I grew up, I think the first time I ever had Mexican, really, I was probably in middle school. No, I take that back. We did have tacos, but you could hardly call that in elementary school. We did have taco day, but you could really hardly call that Mexican.
Right, it's like a Taco
Bell. But the
Bell.
first time I really when I went to college, there was a Chi-Chi's that had a buffet. That was my first exposure.
Which still hardly counts.
It still hardly counts. So what my point is that where I'm from back in the day, like eating Mexican food would have been rare and seen as like I don't know, like multicultural or something.
This is a total digression, but there was I lived in San Francisco for a few years, and in their all weekly they had a guy who did a column called Cheap Eats. He would only review places where a meal was under $10. And so it was all sorts of...
Good idea.
Yes, it was all the divey places that he wanted to get to. And so they always had the annual readers poll of the best this and the best that. And so one year, Chevy's gets best Mexican, in San Francisco, home of the burrito. And so he's immensely offended by it too. For like a year, he had a running, theme of his column was, So I decided I had to get the best Mexican in San Francisco. And I was on my way to Chevy's when all of a sudden I bumped into this other taqueria.
But at least and by the way, let me just give a shout out to Taqueria Poblano here in Alexandria, Virginia, and Del Rey, which is the best tacos, the best Mexican food if you're in Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area. Don't waste your time at Tortilla Coast, friends. That's the Chevy's of Washington, D.C. But, look, at least that reviewer was in on the joke, right? A few years ago, there was this Grand Forks, North Dakota reviewer who, unironically reviewed, what was it?
Olive Garden?
Something like that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, what was your reaction to the David Brooks column?
Again, first reaction was I would also not have had any idea what those sandwiches were.
But would you have been like, I'm uncomfortable eating here. I'm not going to eat an Italian sandwich. I mean, this is hardly. I mean, that's all not even point of the column. But it's
okay.
It's a sandwich, for Pete's sake.
Here's my reaction.
It's like John Kerry putting Swiss on a cheesecake. Swiss is not like the fanciest cheese on the planet. You're still eating a cheesesteak, people.
But I don't want to go into the John Kerry thing, but no, I say like when in Rome, right? And so like if you go to Philadelphia and you go to Pat's, you just get what they give. You don't try to like special order. You're there, you're at Pat's, you get what they give you. And I think the same thing I would have said to David Brooks, like, what's your favorite sandwich here? Or what's the best thing that you guys, and just experienced it. My take on that column was two things. One, I do think that paragraph that people like sort of latched onto that paragraph. It's a little bit unfair,
right.
But that paragraph does expose the sort of condescending elite side of David Brooks, which really is there, that people really do. I think
is that just the side of David Brooks, or is that
but now I'll defend him and say I'm actually envious of him that in a time when everybody in the world is chasing the Trump-Russia story, and let's be honest, there's only so many insights. His last two columns, he had a column, I didn't read it, but it was about like people bailing on each other, like not showing up or like being late to meetings or something, I guess. And now this column, which is not about politics. I envy him that he doesn't have to write about politics, that he doesn't have to write about Trump or Russia. There's a lot. It's an interesting world. There's a lot of things we could be talking about. I like the fact that I can pick up the Times and read a column that's about something other than Trump. And look, I will say this. Of course, people who are attaining some degree of success want their children to have a better life. Is there any doubt that, unless the world falls into anarchy, which is entirely plausible, but assuming that that liberal democracy slouches forward into the next generation, of course my children will have a better opportunity than I had, because they're going to be exposed to things that I'm going to go out of my way to expose them to, ideas and books, and yes, even eccentric food choices to develop their palate. Like that's not me being unfair to poor kids who don't have opportunities. That's me being like a responsible parent and doing what I damn well ought to do. This is incumbent upon me, is my responsibility to try to have and that includes them not being spoiled brats too. You know what I'm saying? But it also includes making sure that they go to college, that they get a good education, all that stuff. So I don't see it as like a negative thing.
Well, let me just add to that, because I think the article is about politics. I mean, it's not about the ins and outs of D.C., but it does speak to policy, and it does speak to the cultural divide that affects our politics. And I felt, and it just to give a small defense of David Brooks here, I mean, he's trying to get out of his own bubble. I mean, he's really transparent about his elitism. And he's trying his best to get out of his own shoes and see things from another part of the country. But I think in doing so, he casts blame on people who are upper middle class for doing, as you say, doing what anybody would do in that situation. Just because you're trying to get an edge for your kid, because you're a kid, doesn't mean you're trying to screw over somebody else's kid.
Right.
And just because you like a nice sandwich,
who among us,
doesn't mean you want other people to not eat other foods. I mean, there was a piece after the election in Politico about this small rural Wisconsin county that went blue to red, and there were a number of liberal, wealthier transplants from Minnesota that had come in. We talk about coastal elites, but the whole point of the article was that these red and blue frictions are really throughout the country. They're not just the edges versus the middle. And they brought in some money. They had some nicer houses, and so the downtown started to reflect their taste. And so there was a pie bar that opened up and the pie slices were a little pricey, and the longtime locals kind of groused about it. Like, I don't go to that place. That's not for me. Just because these guys want to spend $5 on a slice of pie doesn't mean they hate you. It just means they want some nice pie. There was another column in the Times just before from Richard Reeves. I think this is a part of a book that he wrote, saying how like the top, we all this focus on the top 1% ignores the top 20% have policies that favor them versus everybody else, and that's what's hurting the country. And I get the argument about things like mortgage tax deductions aren't the best kind of policy because they don't spread wealth widely. But you talk about college, which is where, and schooling, which where David Brooks is getting to, almost everybody on the left, upper middle class or not, supports things like free college, or robust funding of public schools. Even people on the right support charter schools, and some of the people left support charter schools. And people on the right say charter schools are to help people get out of bad school situations and put them on the right path. People on the left say, well, that's not giving enough people opportunity. That debate aside, both sides are talking about ways to open up educational opportunities. There's nobody out there saying, I want the 80% of the country to be stuck. Everybody supports some kind of class mobility. And when you get to college in particular, I would argue, there is an animus towards college amongst a lot of white working class. So you have this one poll that came out this week from Pew that showed this drop over the last 2 years from Republicans on, do colleges provide value to society? I forget the exact wording of the question. And a lot of interpretation of that was all the beating that we talked about this last week, that the campus left culture is seen as detrimental now amongst the right, and that explains that drop. And that, I'm sure, is part of the narrative. But you also have this other study that came out of white working class that the Atlantic did back in March, where they asked, do you think college is a risky gamble? And the majority of white working class said, yes, we think college is a risky gamble. Just to tie that point off, I interpret that to me, and people can interpret this different ways, of course. When a Democrat goes into a white working class area and says, I want to give you free college, I'm taking away this risk. I'm making it easier for you to advance. I think a lot of interpretation on the ground is, I don't want to go to college. I don't want to live that lifestyle. I don't want to be in the cultural elite. I don't want to have a desk job. I don't want to be in the service economy. I want to have the kind of jobs that my ancestors did, coal or manufacturing or whatever. And I think I'm better off with a vocational education and not a college education. I don't think that the free college argument is wrong. I would argue you're opening up opportunity, but I would argue, don't assume it's going to be politically advantageous to think people are going to be appreciative of that offer when they may not instinctively want it.
This is a great conversation. I think you're right. And this raises all sorts of things. We could just totally go on a jag here. One point, I think you're right. When I interviewed my mom, a Trump voter, on my podcast right after the election, she talked about how, basically the left, this is me sort of piecing together what she said and interpreting it, but the left wants to give you free stuff, the right wants you to be an entrepreneur, but what people really want in Pennsylvania, according to her, is dignity. And that dignity comes from earned success and from work and from a certain type of work, from working with your hands, from building something, from creating something. And I do think that this new economy, it specifically is tough on men. There have been, I brought this up around the inauguration when there was this women's march. And I brought up how women are doing pretty good. It's men who are, and this, I'm telling you, the entire panel, it was as if I said something that they never heard of before. I don't even think they were familiar with the concept, had never heard it. But there were all these books, Men on Strike, The War on Men, Hannah Rosen. It was like at least five, I've had like at least five, read at least 5 books about this phenomenon and working class white men. Was that New York Times piece committing suicide at higher rates, dying from drug and alcohol. Some of it, there's like a lot of factors. I think some of it has to do with the fact that they don't want to be retrained to be a computer programmer, even if they can. They don't want to move. They want to stay where they are, and they want to work building something or in a factory or making $20 an hour. Maybe it's 25, whatever. It used to be 15 when you could have a middle class lifestyle out of working in a factory or something like that. That's what they want to do, and it's unrealistic to think that everyone should go to college. I also think there's a college bubble. Part of it, I think, is obviously just it costs a ridiculous amount. But I also wonder about why are we locked in this paradigm that says, I've talked before, I've written about, and it's not original to me, that are public schools, like high school, middle school, that is a 19th century model. It's a model to train people to be good worker bees, the factory employees or whatever. And maybe it doesn't fit. Who says that you should move somewhere else for 4 years and live in a dorm? And why do we accept this? It's like this model was handed down from on high, but like obviously it was created at the time before we had computers, before we had automobiles. Who says you should move to some place, live there for 4 years, and be like a part of that community and that culture? Why shouldn't you be an individual, live wherever you want to live? You could do it online. You could have tutors and sort of create your own learning environment. And anyway, we could talk. This is like opening up so much. The last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to shut up for a while. This is like the Lincoln Douglas debates. Like you talk for an hour, I talk for an hour and a half. The last thing I'll say is going back to David Brooks, just to sort of put a bow on that. As a columnist, I think that what he is doing is in a way admirable. He is making himself vulnerable, and he is thinking out loud, which is a dangerous thing to do. He's like embarking on a study, like he's sort of, while he's learning about himself and about the changing world, he is writing it through the process of discovery, and that's kind of dangerous. I think that's what Glenn Beck used to do on his TV show all the time. It exposes your ignorance of certain things. It's intimate, it's vulnerable, but part of being vulnerable is it exposes your flaws. And I think that there are good things that come from this, but I think it also exposes Brooks's flaws, including the fact that he is out of touch in many ways. I
think it was Monday or Tuesday. I can't remember at this point. My Twitter feed was just drowning in David Brooks reactions. And then Donald Trump Jr. had this clever ploy to distract us from David Brooks by releasing the emails he had with Rob Goldstone. And now we're stuck talking about Russia when we should be talking more about sandwiches.
I think this is our show, Bill. We don't have to talk, we don't have to talk about Russia.
I'm starting to hear more. I think it was Steve King. I listened to CNN on my Alexa. I don't pay for cable, so I don't know. I don't always know.
Alexa? What's Alexa?
The Amazon Echo.
And that lets you listen. So it's sort of like Sirius.
Yeah, I can stream CNN on the Echo for free, unlike Sirius, which I have to pay for.
I need to learn about this. We've talked about this before. Is this a one-time fee? You buy the Echo once?
I mean, Echo certainly is advantageous along with Amazon Prime, which is more
to help you buy things.
Yeah, well, and have access to music and stuff.
The Echo's a one-time purchase.
I think the Echo is a one-time purchase. I don't. Can you do Echo without Prime? I'm not sure. I didn't buy it, but my wife bought it.
Okay, well, let's get her on here. I want to find out about Echo. Is she around?
She's not around.
Okay.
But the Echo itself is just a one-time purchase device, and so I tend to consume media when I'm in the kitchen washing dishes. So
you're listening to it. You're you're just listening to the audio stream.
Exactly. So,
and can you do Fox and MSNBC too, or just?
I can't do it live. I can do CNN and I can do BBC World Service, and maybe there's some other things I haven't found yet. I can do certain MSNBC and Fox via podcast. I can do Fox Radio Live, but not Fox News TV.
Okay.
So anyway, I think it was Steve King. It sounded like Steve King, but forgive me if I'm casting aspersions inappropriately. Making the case that because the media is obsessed about Russia, they can't pass healthcare. Healthcare was so going to pass. It was right there. And that
Sorry
media.
For laughing out
loud. I get the point that we don't have to talk about it, but I think it is a notable story. Perhaps we just spend a little bit of time talking about it. So where is the manometer today with this information in the news bloodstream?
I think we're like early Watergate. We're not like peak Watergate. We're like early Watergate. You know what I mean? So it's Nixon.
Okay. It's Nixon,
but it's like
not Harding.
I need to learn more about. I know is Harding Teapot Dome.
Yeah.
I need to learn more about that to say. I can't really make like my. When is Whistle Stop going to do a podcast on Harding?
I refer to Harding more because my most macabre gut says Trump's not going to get impeached and convicted because it will require Republican votes and they're never going to materialize. But he could die. He could totally die from bad health habits, and there were some conspiracies about Harding's death, but presumably it was just.
I'm convinced he's going to outlive everybody, and it's because he's immune to, the last. And by the way, he's preserving his energy by not working out. Don't forget. That's the. Let me ask you.
So when after Harding died, the Teapot Dome really broke big after that, and Coolidge had to deal with the aftermath.
And for those of you who like this drop in history on us, last week we talked about that airplane pilot who reads and reviews. He sits on the tarmac. I would argue he's probably responsible for at least 50% of the delays. He reads and reviews on his blog presidential biographies.
He's done almost 200 reviews so far.
And then he tweeted that How did he find out?
I don't know. I don't know if he's a fan.
So this is the reach of the show that you didn't tip him off.
No.
He organically discovered that we were,
or someone else pinged him. I don't know. But if you're out there, bestpresidentialbios.com, we salute you.
We should have him on one of our podcasts or something.
I think you're trying to distract me from talking about Trump.
I don't want to talk about Russia.
Have they got it to you?
3 minutes.
Do you think, is there a point where Republicans would want to oust him? Are we getting close to a breaking point where even Republicans say, I can't do it? Let's get Pence for Pete's sake. It'd be so much better.
Well, I love how Pence is really going out of his way to.
I wasn't even picked in June. I didn't come around till July.
Oh man, no. This is the reason I don't want to talk about Russia is because I don't think there's much new to say. Republicans are going to stick with them. I'll just anecdotally, my I go to my church and my Sunday school class. I almost got into a heated discussion with one of my classmates who hates the media and loves Trump. And it's totally anecdotal, but these people are not. They don't care about this. This is not moving now.
Can't be broken.
No. It's gonna. I think it's like the tipping point, like the Malcolm Gladwell thing, where like one day something will have happened and they will abandon him, but there's no accretion. There's no there's no signs of it. You're chopping down the tree and it's not falling, and it's not falling, and then one day it falls, right? And like which swing was it that took down the tree?
What if there was video of Donald Trump in bed with Michael Moore talking about how the wall will never be built? Could that possibly do it?
I don't think so. No. Not with the Lion Media editing those videos. No. So look, I mean, the truth is, I don't. So Republican politicians do what the base demands of them, and they operate to get reelected or to try to get reelected. And this is not just Republican politicians, but they're the people we're talking about. So, there's no like moral outrage that will cause them. This will be purely a Machiavellian. Like, if it comes to the point where it's smarter politics to walk away from Trump than to support Trump, that's when they will do it. There is no like, now he's offended my Christian, or my conservative values and my principles. No, that doesn't exist.
Now that's hard base, and arguably that is sufficient for preventing impeachment and conviction, preventing 25th Amendment, all that sort of thing. But is there enough? I mean, his polls are still, upper 30s. I think he touched 40 in the Gallup the other day. I mean, it's in the bounce between 37 and 40 most of the time.
If you believe the polls, Bill.
If you believe the polls. Is there enough softness there where a establishment Republican, a Murkowski, a Portman, a Dean Heller, a Jeff Flake, they say, there's no good reason for me to stick my neck out for this guy. When he comes to me and says, who cares what the details of this healthcare bill is? Who cares what the CBO score is? I need you to give me this win.
Yeah.
Does he?
No, yeah, that's a good point. I think I would make a distinction there. I think that you're right. I don't think he has the juice to move people to support his agenda. Like, I don't think that he's so popular that he can pressure or lean on people like Portman or Heller to support his agenda. However, that's a different thing from them saying he has to go, he needs to be removed or impeached. I think you're right. I mean, just look at what's happening with healthcare right now. I mean, as a prime example. And I'm probably going to write a piece next week about what he's done in his first 6 months. And I don't think it's much different than the piece I wrote at 100 days. Like, I don't think...
All the stuff he got those handful of Obama regulations stripped through the Congressional Review Act, and nothing. There's been nothing.
And Gorsuch. And Gorsuch.
Right, Gorsuch. But that's
it. Maybe I'm wrong, but has anything happened since then? Like, really?
I mean, Supreme Court gave a partial win on travel ban, at least for the moment. That's all I can think of.
Yeah.
So one last Russia-related question that I want to move on to, something self-serving. In the conversations you have informally with people in your cultural elite DC lifestyle, do people feel like there are more shoes to drop? We're not anywhere close to being done here. This could rise to Jared, possibly to Trump himself.
He went to Jared. That never gets old.
What's the feeling?
I just think that it's sort of almost like it's almost common sense that there's way more, right? I mean, so here you have, who knows who the leak is, but you have a story and you have an email from Don Jr. that leaks out But what about the fact that Mueller has subpoena power and the power to get to cut deals with people, to flip and to like turn states, whatever witness or like this information is pretty shocking that came out about the meeting with this Russian lawyer. That had nothing to do with Robert Mueller's ability to like subpoena emails and to offer immunity deals. Like what else might be in emails that Mueller has currently in his possession or will get, and what else might come from somebody, a Paul Manafort or a Michael Flynn, in order to cut a deal?
And is there any conspiracy theorizing as to who would have leaked this email? I mean, it's got to be a very tight circle of people who would have access to this email.
I mean, I've heard some interesting theories. One theory is like a Paul Manafort. He was forwarded the email. Maybe he's already cutting a deal. Maybe. Why
would you leak it then? Why you just give it to Mueller? Why would you leak?
Maybe Mueller's people leaked it to start establishing. You said conspiracy theory.
Right. A good conspiracy theory has to make some sense.
Okay.
Why would Mueller leak? Mueller just want to hold on everything, just drop it all at the end. Why get ahead of himself?
All right, another conspiracy theory is it came from Russia.
What do they have to get out of that?
Because conspiracy theory. It would be that this is sending. So Trump has actually started. Trump originally was very pro-Russian. Then he started to try to show some distance from Russia, and this is a warning shot.
They just had the chummiest meeting with Putin a few days ago. Everything's right as rain.
I don't know.
All right.
What's your theory? How does this? Is it just a rise?
I'm truly befuddled. Who would leak it? I don't know. I have no idea who would have the incentive to leak it. And I also don't know exactly who had access to it. I mean, we know Jared and Manafort would have because they were forwarded it, but did someone else get it beyond that? There's some sort of personal dispute going on there. I mean, it goes beyond my.
Does anybody? What about Tiffany Trump?
Living her best life.
I mean, maybe she resents some of the attention that Don Jr. has been getting.
Right.
Ever think of that?
Well, if she'd have to some pretty fierce hacking skills if she was going to get her hands on, I assume. Well, let me shift gears completely.
Let me just say that the opinions expressed Matt Lewis do not even represent Matt Lewis, let alone the good people at the bloggingheads.tv.
Let me shift gears. I have a piece out in Politico today, how to lose a fight with progressives, which I'm sure nobody read because it came out the day of all his email stuff. But last week you had two attempts by Democratic centrist CEOs, one being Mark Penn's column in the New York Times, co-authored with Andrew Stein, who was a Democrat who backed Trump. Mark Penn, of course, was Hillary's former pollster and chief strategist in the 2008 campaign, who now founded a private equity firm. So he had a piece called Back to the Center Democrats, where he says that the Bernie people are taking things too far to the right. Democrats lost white working class voters who think they are too dismissive of religion and bending over backwards for immigrants and not the heartland, and had a series of proposals that were kind of left-right mishmashes. We should be for fair trade, but we should repatriate the corporate profits from being parked overseas to avoid taxes. We should regulate the gig economy more, but the brick and mortar economy is being regulated to death. So that was his thing. And then you have the Silicon Valley project called Win the Future, founded by Zynga's Mark Pincus and by LinkedIn's Reid Hoffman. They said to Recode.com that the Democratic Party's going too far to the left. We want to have a platform for new ideas that we crowdsource, and the best ideas for our first thing that get voted up to the top on Twitter, we're gonna slap them on billboards in Washington D.C. We want to recruit candidates. We talked about recruiting the lead singer of Third Eye Blind, Stephen Jenkins, to perhaps run against Dianne Feinstein. We wanted to brand them as WTF Democrats, short for Win the Future, but of course WTF has its own connotation. And all these things were roundly mocked by the progressive populists. One guy said, what the last Democratic Party needs is a bunch of Silicon Valley billionaires. Mark Penn's been wrong time and time again. No one should listen to this guy. And my bottom line in the piece was, because most of their critics are saying, we don't want you in the Democratic Party, get out. One guy even literally said, these guys should go fix the Republican Party, make them more sane. They don't need to water down the Democratic message. My argument was, if they want to play a constructive role, they need to recognize that their corporate resume is not a boon in the intra-party argument. And if you have ideas, Mark Pingus had one idea in his WTF project for not free college, but free college for engineers, for engineering degrees, to which one guy responded, that's great for Silicon Valley CEOs who want to pay engineers less. That doesn't suggest you actually want to solve inequality broadly. So my argument to them was, you need to show, one, you need to have some substantive ideas. It can't be bumper sticker ideas for billboards. You gotta have more detailed, nuanced ideas that are clearly better in practice than what the populist left is offering if you're going to outclass them. And you got to show that you're willing to patrol your own. Be a class traitor. Show you're going to clamp down on corporate misbehavior. Show you're willing to accept higher taxes. Smart regulation that is going to help the common good while also allow corporations to make profits. They have to get to that level, I think, if they're going to play a constructive role. Otherwise, they're going to get laughed out of town. Which is, the WTF thing, had 650 Twitter followers at the end of this. These are Silicon Valley billionaires. They should be able to get bigger Twitter followings, and they haven't been able to do that out of the box at least. So something's not working right for them. I was trying to offer some constructive advice.
You should turn this into some consulting. Why give away this for free?
That would be smart. You're absolutely right.
They should bring you out there, man. Out to Silicon Valley.
What should I charge?
A lot. They'll think you're better if you charge.
Right, that's true.
Confiscatory rates. Hey, apropos of nothing, except I saw her on Twitter or something. But I wanted to circle back. We talked about this a few months ago. Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
Just wanted to circle back. I'm very intrigued by her. And the last time I heard anything out of her, she was sort of on Team Putin, it seemed like.
Okay.
And I think we had a discussion about, why is she doing this? Doesn't she seems like a rising star. Why is she hitching her star to this wagon that seems like it might be going off a cliff? Where is she at on this now, right? Because, she was sort of, it seems like the Russia story's gotten worse for her. And it's gotten worse for Trump and for her. Do you have any sense on what the status of that is?
I haven't heard from her, quite frankly. And there remains a strain of the left which is either outright dismissive of the Russia story, or there's a couple ticks away from that, which is Russia is important, but real Americans care about health care and wages and inequality. We should talk about that more.
But that one actually is not necessarily misdirection. You and I both agree that the scandals and silver bullets don't usually work, and if they're preventing you from developing a coherent alternative philosophy, then it's a mistake.
Well, I think there's limited political gain in chasing scandal most of the time. I do think this is a very large scandal. So I'm not recommending Democrats stop talking about it or stop pursuing it. If there was going to be, I mean, everyone looks at Watergate as the model. If you shoot the king, you best not miss. If anything had the potential to be Watergate level, it would be this. So it's hard.
Doesn't there need to be a gate attached to this? Everything else, like White Watergate,
everything needs to have a Ghazi attached to it now.
Why is it that there's no Russiagate? Like, no one's calling it Russiagate, or like, why? I feel like even mini scandals had gate attached to them for the last 30 years.
It got played. But I want to get back to the Tulsi thing, because this is not Tulsi directly, but there was a little skirmish that broke out, didn't get much attention, within the Nation magazine. This is one of the longest running, liberal magazines out there, going back to the 19th century. The editor-in-chief and part owner, Katrina vanden Heuvel, is married to a professor named Stephen Cohen. And Stephen Cohen has a contributing editor title at The Nation. And Cohen is known as probably the biggest Putin, some would say apologist or defender. He might not use those words. But he's written lots of things where he says that people are being overheated about Putin and we should be listening to him more and working with him. And coming out of the G20 meeting, he was on Tucker Carlson's show and said that Trump was being politically courageous, quote unquote, in meeting Putin, and that he was behaving like a statesman. And,
only Trump can go to Hamburg.
Right. And so a Nation columnist, Katha Pollitt, wrote on Facebook that this, I'm not quoting her verbatim here, but she criticized Cohen, and she said that the Nation can't lead the resistance if it's going to be giving political cover for Trump and Russia. And she cited not just Cohen, but one other article that was in the Nation recently. Now, there are other things in the Nation that don't do that. Joan Walsh is at the Nation, and she's been very critical about Trump and Russia. And the Nation has a long history of airing internal disputes, so that's not unusual. But so it's pretty stiff charge from Pollitt to say the Nation can't lead the resistance if it's doing this based on the actions of the editor-in-chief's husband, a contributing editor. So that debate is happening within a section of the left, and it's not clear to me, because I think Tulsi has been low profile, and if I'm mistaken about that, people can let me know. But I'm not convinced she believes she's willing to, own that in a presidential race. I think if she did, I'm not saying she would win, but I think there would be a constituency for her if she pushed that point hard. But certainly the lion's share of the left right now is very much, Putin's bad, Trump is ever being close to Putin, we need to pursue this to the hilt.
Oh, where I just remembered where I saw her. It was on, his name's Jack Hunter, I think.
The former
the former Southern Avenger.
Right.
Actually, a really nice, sweet guy. Mm-hmm. Got to be honest. Mm-hmm. But on his Facebook page, he said something about something about how she has she espouses libertarian views. It was very complimentary about her sort of being a left libertarian and representing this interesting angle that doesn't get represented enough in politics, something like that. So I did recently see her, and I just wanted to circle back on Gabbard Watch because as I said before, like if I just have to imagine there's like a Mark Penn somewhere going, Tulsi baby, well, listen, we can take you to the White House.
Not a
pen. Calm down.
Not a pen.
You know what I mean? Look, don't you think that there's like a mainstream consultant who would be saying, this Putin stuff, baby, this is bad news. No.
Well, I just don't think. I mean, Gabbard clearly has some, beliefs, some rock hard beliefs. I don't think she's playing the game of let's modulate one's views here to climb the ladder. I think she.
Really? Clearly not.
And what her long-term objective is, I can't say, but I still think I don't think that's the game she's playing.
Well, it does make her very interesting, and there are interesting people like Justin Amash and Tulsi, I think, would be in that category.
Well, Amash and I guess Southern Avenger. Southern Avenger, renounced the pro-Confederate line he had been taking previously, and wrote some articles about
I'm a believer that this guy is really a good guy, and that he has recanted his past.
But I'm assuming, based on what you're saying, he's always been a Ron Paul guy, and there's always been a Ron Paul strand of conservatism, which is anti-imperialist, anti-military intervention. Taking libertarianism, extrapolating it to foreign policy, stay out of everybody's business.
Yeah. And libertarians should hate Trump.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of them do.
But some of them, there's a weird, Venn diagram, though.
Yeah. Trump scrambles a lot of lines. And, Tulsi certainly has some conservative views that rankle the left. She's been charged for being Islamophobic.
Her dad was a conservative state senator or something.
He was anti same-sex marriage, and she adopted that view for a time, and now she slipped on it. Tulsi, stirs up strong views within the left. But I could see, Jack. What's his last name again?
Hunter,
right.
I think it's Hunter.
I mean, he might see Tulsi as someone who could, be in that Ron Paul mode, who could unite left-wing and right-wing anti-interventionists. And is hoping to build that kind of constituency for her.
Well, this has been a very long, but I think good episode of the DMZ.
So what sandwich will we be getting today after this? Has your appetite been whetted for obscure cured Italian meats?
No, I can't say that it had. However, I'm up for anything. So next time you're in town, if you want to Sherpa me around, I will go and try some of that. Happy to do that.
That's not my go-to.
Cher's probably Italian, right? You're Italian, aren't you?
I'm Italian on my mother's side, which is Messina.
Loggins in Messina.
Scher is German, East European, Jewish. Messina is
I knew that. Okay, but I knew there was an Italian. Yeah. I knew you must have told me at some point that you were part Italian.
But my cultural depth in either side is very, very limited. So
I just
get some burgers and barbecue.
Well, I'm down for that. There's some. We could do Hill Country barbecue in DC, or there's a little place called Pork Barrel Barbecue, fitting for DC as well.
You gotta go far out. You gotta get into Western Virginia, get some real barbecue, right?
I think you got to go to Kentucky or you got to go to Austin or Louisville to get real barbecue. Probably. I don't think there's any authentic. The place that Frank Underwood ate at a sort of a hole in the wall place on House of Cards, right? A barbecue place. There's a place in Alexandria. It's not barbecue, but it's soul food. That's very much like that. That's pretty authentic.
That we can do. And if you come up to here, you can do a New England barbecue tour, because New England barbecue actually exists. So whenever you get up here, we'll hit all the spots.
I need to do I need to do a big. I've never been to Fenway. I think I need to do a tour of Massachusetts and New England.
You can do Fenway and a slew of minor league ballparks.
Yeah.
You can do some American Revolutionary stuff, I'm sure. You can do the churches, all the old New England churches, like our Jonathan Edwards church here.
I could do the Salem witch trial.
Yep.
And of course Calvin Coolidge.
Yeah, you hit the library here, hit the homestead in Vermont. There's all sorts of it's a Republican festival.
Sure, we'll make it. Sure, we will, Mr. Homer. We'll make it one day to Massachusetts. I've never been. I've never set foot in Massachusetts.
That's crazy.
I've been so close. I mean, I've been obviously all over New Hampshire.
Right.
And I think that I was really close to Massachusetts one time, like this past year, but never made it. I never flew. A lot of people fly into Boston and drive to but I've never done that. So
you're living in a geographic bubble as usual.
Yep. All right. Check me out at the Daily Beast. I'm having Carl Cannon on the podcast, Matt Lewis in the News.
Oh, you scooped me. I was gonna say the same thing.
Are you having him on your podcast?
I haven't set a date, but we have tentative plans.
All right, so tomorrow he and I are having lunch, and then we're taping a podcast to talk about his new book on this date. And check out the podcast, Matt Lewis and the News. And Bill, plug some stuff there.
Yeah, check my Politico piece, how to lose a fight with progressives. And I should have a Real Clear Politics piece on Monday, but have a topic TBA.
Yeah. Let me give a shout out. I'm reading Founder's Son right now by Richard Brookhiser. It's about Abraham Lincoln looking to the founding fathers as his father. So there's a line in there like, his father's Thomas Jefferson, not Thomas Lincoln, that kind of thing. So good book. I recommend it. I'm about 5 years late to it. But check that out. And we'll see you all back here in the DMZ next week.
All right. Take care.